I was wondering, with something like this, how do you actually start? Is it with characters? Is it elements, certain scenes? I mean, how do you get going on a major composition like this?
I watched the film quite a few times, and then I try and find an overture, which is the titles music and the end credits. It's really about finding music that feels like it has a resonance with all of the characters and the narrative and just the psychology of the film. And it's just I guess it's just trying to find that vocabulary initially, and then as the film goes along, I kind of elucidate on each of the different strands of narrative and try and find a way of bringing out the story. So, I mean, it's a weird thing because there's no sound effects, there's no dialogue, there's no director, there's, alive telling you what to do. So it's kind of, or asking you to do certain things. So it's kind of, you just have to find your way through it. And Hitchcock himself said the film was too long, is one of the things that he said. And so I'm trying to actually also create themes which come back and motifs which come back so that it feels like you're on familiar territory and you're not feeling like you're learning things and learning new information all the time. So that's something I think works very well if you actually have motifs for certain characters and certain moments and interactions. I think that helps it.
It really helps guide you, definitely helps you guide you through the movie. I know you also orchestrated the score yourself. I was wondering if you could just say something about your choice of instrumentation, particularly in the kind of evolution of those themes for the two lead characters.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's kind of, there's the whole thing of sweeping strings, which have a romantic kind of side to them. It's the third silent movie I've scored, and I always find you can't really beat those kind of sweeping violins. You have to go with them if you want to kind of get across romance. And this is essentially a romantic film. I mean, this is what I've always said about Hitchcock, is that first and foremost for me, he was a romantic director. And then, around that is built all the other stuff and the horror and the thrillers and, all the rest of it. But essentially, he's romantic, and that's what I was trying to find with the instrumentation. Also, it was the biggest and strangest choice in some ways was actually trying to decide whether to put in songs, and I was torn because I thought, well, is there a place for that in a Hitchcock film? And I guess ultimately, I said this before, that I was thinking of this operatically, and I like the idea of treating, the songs as arias and having this kind of simplicity to the songs, which would contrast against all this kind of constant orchestration and recitato kind of feel. And so it was just putting that into kind of, by way of contrast. And for me, yes, it takes you out of everything, but then we are looking back. And I kind of thought if I just simply score it in a kind of, in the same way, Bernard Herrmann might have done, then there's nothing to say that we're looking back on this. And I kind of wanted to make that reference as well.
At what point in the evolution of the score did you introduce the songs or get the idea to have them?
Quite early on, actually. And it was also trying to find something which had a real, contrast to everything else in terms of what was going on. For instance, particularly the last two songs with the sisters, his sister's death. It's a real moment. It's a very poignant moment for him, and it's him having an emotional catharsis. And it's really where you learn who the lodger is. And I think if I just made it instrumental, it wouldn't have had the same emotional resonance as having a song. In addition, having this kind of feeling of her being very supportive to him. And saying, "I'm here for you," all those kinds of lyrics that I put in. It was just really about getting inside her head and really kind of, I guess, you complete that kind of romantic interaction. And so those two songs at the end, for me, make that work.
Yeah, they work very movingly.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it is tricky to make it work. But, I mean, it's the whole way through. I'm working in programming, so I'm working with two programs. One is called Logic, and it's a program that's used by a lot of people who create songs and music, and it allows me to mock up the instrumentation, the orchestration, and so I can hear everything against picture. You have to import the QuickTime movie, or the movie of this into logic, and then you have to work with precise tempo to actually get those very detailed moments in as well. So that's the first thing, and then thereafter putting it into Sibelius, which is another program where it can, I work on completing the score with a team of people. We then kind of get it ready with a team of copyists, and we get it ready for the orchestra to play. And then, it's the magic of the London Symphony Orchestra playing it beautifully and really getting the timing precise and reading the score. I mean, we literally, recorded the score in 2 days, and we had, and they pretty much sight read it. And then we had 1 day of rehearsal to perform it live at the Barbican. So it amazes me always how incredible and quick a great orchestra is.
One thing that's kind of surprised me recently is there's felt like there's been a resurgence of interest in silent cinema, and you've certainly been one of the kind of people of a younger generation very much supporting that and getting silent cinema out to new audiences. And when the Sight and Sound poll of the so-called greatest films of all time was announced last week, I was amazed that there are 3 silent films still in that, even in the kind of 21st century. What for you is the reason why there's so much kind of potency and interest in silent film now, so far from the talkies taking over?
I think it's getting back to the art of storytelling, and music and visuals do all of that, and they work on a subconscious level that is direct input to emotions. I think dialogue and so on. We live in a very sophisticated age with the internet, and we're able to see the most fantastic special effects and the most incredible craftsmanship in the way people make films, so that you almost believe you're there. But I kind of think there's a beautiful naivety and simplicity to watching a silent movie that is still very magical, and it takes you to another world, and it takes you to a world that has a history to it as well. And so we're now able to look at these films and have a sense of nostalgia about them. And I think even, the other day I was watching Raging Bull, and which is made in black and white, and yet it's made in 1980. But there's something about it being black and white, or films like Manhattan, that still have give a feeling of being on a journey and having a sense of nostalgia about the events that go on during the course of a film. I think add that with music and a great orchestra, and you have a magical combination.
Yeah. You mentioned previously this is the 3rd silent film you scored. You scored The Roosters, Each Night I Dream, and Thread of Dice, the Franz Osten film. I was just wondering how much you had learned, I suppose, the art of scoring for silent films over that period.
Well, I've scored lots of films as well. I think I've scored about 50-odd films now. But for silent movie, I think it's always a real challenge. And I think when you're writing for, it is a big thing to obviously write for Hitchcock and to really get into this film. But I think each time you're trying to immerse yourself in a new world or a different world, and so you serve the project. And so I don't really think of anything else other than where am I with this particular film? How do I feel about the characters? How do I feel about the story? And then it's really about finding the specific vocabulary and feeling that is going to take you on that journey as a composer, and hopefully take the audience on the journey too.
Nitin, I just want to ask you one final question. We've talked about the possibility of Vangelis scoring Metropolis, but I wondered if you had your eye on another silent film.
No, not at the moment. I'm kind of, what's been great is people have actually approached me to do these 3 films, and so I just tend to respond to things that happen, and that's how it's always been. I enjoy that, but. Yeah, I love doing it. It's a wonderful thing to do, and it's an incredible honour and privilege to be doing this kind of work, especially with one of my heroes as a director, and actually having Bernard Herrmann posthumously follow in my footsteps, as I said. But yeah, it's great. I love doing it, and I hope I do it again. But I can't say when that'll happen or how.